3 February 2023. And today we want to look at the interview that was held yesterday by CCC President Nelson Chamisa, who was celebrating his 45th birthday. And he had quite a long interview with the CCC Communications Department, in which he covered quite a lot about his future vision or vision for Zimbabwe after he wins the election. So you can go and watch that full interview on CCC or also on TechMag YouTube channel. But there is a key portion that I want to look at today, and this is going to be critical. We're going to be focusing on this a lot because this is the whole point of the 2023 elections. And Chamisa was talking about the role of SADC, especially the SADC organ for the politics, security and defense, which is going to be chaired by Zambian President Hakainde Hichilema. And you remember we published this week that there was a meeting in Namibia where there was almost a handover or a preparation for the handover to President Hakainde Hichilema of this organ. So Chamisa was asked whether he thinks the presence of President Hakainde Hichilema will make a difference, as this is the first election where this organ will be chaired by someone like President Hakainde Hichilema, who, as we all know, is quite close to Nelson Chamisa. He's not coming from the original freedom fighters movements, which are all across Southern Africa. And Chamisa did answer, and the answer was very, very revealing. I'm going to play that short clip for you after this, but in short, what Chamisa is saying that he expects SADC to play a key role before the election, during the election, and during the handover. If he wins, he expects SADC to help with the handover, which is something that has not happened in Zimbabwe before. There has never been a handover of power from ZANU-PF to any other political party. The only time that Mugabe lost, there was eventually a runoff which became very bloody. There was a bloody election in 2008. After Mugabe won, the runoff election became a big problem. So in Chamisa's opinion, or in his view or in his expectation, SADC is supposed to play a bigger role in Zimbabwe during this election, especially if he was to win the election. But I want to look at a key change in what Chamisa is saying. At first, Chamisa was saying the election should be supervised by the United Nations or by SADC because the internal organs which are there were not able or capable of running a free and fair election. In this answer, Chamisa did not say that. He did not say that the election should be supervised by the United Nations. He did not say the election should be supervised by SADC or SADC. So that's a big change. You understand that at first, Chamisa was not very confident in the operations of ZEC. But I think he is realizing that he can actually win this election with or without the supervision of the United Nations. So he's getting more and more confident. This is my view of what Chamisa is doing. He's trying as much as possible to work with the existing structures. He also said it earlier in the interview that he's willing to work with the ZANU-PF because ZANU-PF is one of the parties or the key stakeholders in Zimbabwe. You can watch that interview. He said it. He said that one party cannot address all the problems in Zimbabwe. It was a revealing and interesting interview, and I always enjoy watching Chamisa when he's having interviews. He's got a way of taking you down a path of what he thinks of his grand ideas about the whole country of Zimbabwe. And I hope that he does more interviews. I hope that he's more in front of the people, especially on the platforms, on the multiple platforms. And obviously, when we set up our own studio in Zimbabwe, I hope to one day have a sit down and have a chat with Chamisa himself. So thank you very much for watching. You can watch the short clip here when Chamisa was responding to that question on whether the presence of President Hakainde Hichilema will make a difference in the Zimbabwe elections in 2023. In my own view, President Hakainde Hichilema is a very different kind of president from all the other presidents that are there in SADC. He's very confident, he's very principled, and he's got his own views on issues. And I do not think it's going to be the same. SADC, they might end up not being unanimous. If, for example, something happens in Zimbabwe and there's violence or there is something that becomes a problem, I do not think Hakainde Hichilema will just sit there and let the whole thing pass or ignore it. So, in my view, Hakainde Hichilema is going to make a very big difference. And especially if he's chairing this organ for politics, defense, and security, it is going to be difficult for Zimbabwe to stay off the agenda of this organ, which is very important. And it's very important to note that SADC, when they do their observer missions, normally they have had long periods of deliberation before producing their reports. And I think this time around, it's going to be quite different in terms of what SADC says about the Zimbabwe election. And I know that it is very important what SADC says. If SADC says the election in Zimbabwe was free and fair, the other bodies like ECOWAS and all that, they will find it difficult to say the election was not free and fair. And in the past, the regional bodies have actually intervened in elections. For example, the ECOWAS that I just mentioned, they have gone and intervened in neighboring countries or member countries where there are problems. So let's see what happens. But it seems like Chamisa really has confidence in SADC this time around. And he said it. And I think you can hear it by yourself. This is clearly a different election. And 2023 is going to be different in many, many respects. Thank you very much and good night.
Actually, the excellent Hakainde Hichilema is going to be leading a very important organ in SADC, the SADC Troika, for the first time. And this is the year we are also going to be having Zimbabwean elections. Do you think that this is going to change the tone as far as SADC will see Zimbabwe, unlike all the other past elections?
Well, SADC is governed by rules, it's governed by laws and statutes, and it is the organs that run SADC. We have always trusted the doctrine and principle of African solutions to African problems. And we've said to SADC, we've said to the AU, our problems require your cooperation. Help us to help ourselves. None but ourselves as a people can liberate this country. But what we need is the helping hand to make sure that we have free and fair elections, to make sure that the journey to elections is not littered with violence, intimidation, fraud, or bloodshed. Let us have a peaceful election. Let us have a credible plebiscite. And once we have had that election, let the outcome of that election be respected. And we count on our partners, we count on SADC, the AU, and the international community to scaffold and underwrite the irreversibility of a credible outcome and an irreversible mandate of the people of Zimbabwe. So that ultimately is the supremacy of the ballot and not the donation. Ultimately, it is the supremacy of the will of the people, not the will and capital.